Hi everyone, welcome to Propulsion Labs, our podcast about the business of developer tools. And today I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Adam Frankl, best-selling author, advisor, investor, founder, the final boss of developer marketing. Adam, welcome to the show. I have a ton of questions for you.
Thank you, Victoria. I am so happy to be here.
I'm very excited because Adam and I see each other at events all the time, and I always come to Adam and ask some questions, and every time I learn something new, and I think everybody can. In the developer tool space, marketing is one of those questions that is problematic for a lot of founders. And today I want to start with the problems of 2025. So now we live in a world where AI is booming. There's oversaturation of the market, so many tools to try. Developers are overwhelmed and perhaps skeptical about the powers of AI and LLMs. If you were to start a developer tool startup this year, how would you build your messaging and how would you approach this in general?
Okay, what a great question. Thank you for asking it. And let me also say that 2025 has got to be the best year ever for starting a developer tool startup because there is so much chaos. And that's what makes this exciting. If there was no chaos, if there was no change, then why bother start a developer tool company, right? The existing vendors have it all handled. Everyone's happy with their tools and people are being productive, but that's not what's going on right now. Technology change is changing everything. And that means there's a whole new set of problems to attack. And every time you have a new problem, you have the opportunity for a new startup. So there's never been a better time to do a dev tool startup than this year. And in terms of how do you pick what you're going to attack? Well, first of all, you have to be in love with the problem. This is so important, right? You have to pick a problem, right, that the problem also picks you. It's the type of problem that you just can't sleep at night because you're thinking about it. And during the day, it's like your ordinary activities. It's like you find yourself thinking about the problem. And then as you're having conversations with people, you find yourself, well, I need to talk about this problem, right? You know when the problem is the right problem because it seizes a hold of your brain. And then you say, I have to solve this, right? And the only way that I can solve this problem is by founding a startup. And quite frankly, even though that sounds crazy, that's the only real reason for creating a startup is that there is a problem out there that you have, that other people have, that a lot of people have that needs to be solved and you are the one to solve it. And so you need to solve it right now. And the startup is a great mechanism for enabling you to solve that problem. And there's never been so many problems as there have right now, right? First of all, right, with the age of vibe coding and with agentic coding and armies of agents attacking software, right? This is a sea change in how software is built. However, there is still a long distance between someone coming up with an idea saying, I wish that I could have a piece of software that did this, and actually having a piece of software in production at scale doing this. Vibe coding has changed. Well, it hasn't changed everything. It's changed a lot. And the fact that it hasn't changed everything is what leaves opportunities. Things that used to be really expensive are now cheap. Things that used to be so cheap people didn't think about it are now super expensive. And so everything has been scrambled. So it's the opportunity for a dev tool startup to come in with a brand new value proposition and say, here's the problem that I'm attacking, right? Let's see if I can build a following of people that need to solve this problem.
So let's imagine I'm a developer. I found this problem that's very painful for me. I love it. I'm ready to dedicate full-time attention to this, but people don't really seem to care about it as much. How do I know when to stop iterating on this and just like taking it behind the barn?
Let me tell you what not to do first, and then I tell you what you should be doing. Okay. What not to do is saying, oh, this is a really interesting problem. I'm going to lock myself away in a room with 100 books on the subject and read every one of them cover to cover. And that's how I'm going to become an expert in this problem. Don't do that. Here's another thing not to do, which is, this is an interesting problem. I experienced this problem. I know all about it. I am going to lock myself in a room and just crank out code until the problem is solved perfectly in every dimension. And I've chased down every corner case and every edge case, and it all works perfectly. And then I will release it to a grateful world. Don't do that. That doesn't work either. So let me tell you what does work. There is a problem. Okay. You identify the problem, you think about the problem, you name the problem, and then you go on social media. Social media is a great gift to developers, and you start writing about the problem. Tell me all about the problem. What is the nature of this problem? What are the symptoms of this problem? Where does the problem come from? What major trends are making this problem every day? Your mechanistic goal is you want to be posting about this problem every day because you want to be the authority on this problem. Authority, author, it's the same root, right? To be an authority, you have to write. And the social media algorithms, they reward people who write every day. So don't write 6-page papers with footnotes and citations the way that you learned in grad school. That's fine for grad school. Don't do it. Okay. That's not how modern day developers absorb information. Write short 250-word posts, right, that get attention, and just put it out there and be consistent. The only people who will read it to begin with are people you already know. So you already have some level of credibility, right? And your mom, and she'll like everything you post. So that's good. Appreciate that. Okay. But then as you write and you become an authority, okay, you'll start to get engagement with people out there, which is people will start by liking what you write. And then some of them will engage further. Some of them will comment. Some of them will repost or retweet, right? Whatever social media platform you're doing. And that's how you build a following. When people engage with you, engage back. Talk with them. Actually get on Zoom and talk with them about the problem. Every time you talk with someone, you will learn something. When you learn something, write about it. So in advance of laying down a single line of code, become known as the authority on the problem. After you're authority on the problem, your next goal is to become an expert on the problem. Now, you can't make yourself an expert. Only other people can make you an expert. And the way that works is really quite simple. When other people cite you and quote you and retweet and repost you, right? And other experts do that, then you're an expert. But you need to be an authority first and then an expert. And nowhere here did I mention anything about writing lines of code, because you need to assemble your audience first. And if you're working with them the right way, they will tell you what your first product actually needs to be. They want you to build a great first product. Why? Because everyone following you wants you to solve this problem. That's the win for them. So they will help you by guiding you into how to solve it in the best way that's most compelling for them. I'm talking on and on because this is the key gap I see right now. So many software entrepreneurs, they think, oh, I just want to sit at home and write code and write more code and write more code. And maybe I'll put it out on GitHub and open source it. Okay. And I'll get stars and I'll write more code and get more stars and more code will happen. And you do this. And where in this loop are you actually talking to devs? It takes some effort. And so you need to make the effort. And that's the difference really between a super skilled hobbyist developer, right, who just puts code out there because they love writing code, and an entrepreneur, right? An entrepreneur is someone who, is an inventor, invents new technology. An innovator, that's what your customers are. They're innovators. They use new technology to do an old process in new ways. That's the literal meaning of innovation. If you want to be an entrepreneur is about finding a market need and filling it. And the only way to find a market need is to talk to people in the market. And the best way to talk to people in the market is to become an authority and then invite engagement and then create something like a technical advisory board.
So in 2025, we've got AI, we've got so many different startups appearing, so many tools, new categories, right? Like the market is disrupting rapidly. What social media channels would you recommend keeping at the top of your mind, like today?
Yeah, it's so crazy, right? There are so many social media channels. And the problem with saying, oh, this one's the best, right, is that, well, if no one goes there, it's not the best. And if everyone goes there, it's not the best either, right? So 2 years ago, I loved LinkedIn. And when I wrote my book, every paragraph that I wrote, I put out on LinkedIn. And if people liked it, it went into the book file. And if people didn't like it, it goes deleted, never to be seen from again, right? That was great. The problem is so many people realized that was so good that LinkedIn is now glutted with content, right? What you need to do to stand out there, I no longer know. But here's the cheat code, right? There's developer specific social media too, right? And you can love or you can hate X, right? There's so many options. There's devs on Facebook even. But the real goal is to become such an expert in your problem that the devs who want to learn how to deal with your problem will find you no matter where you are. So the precise social media channel doesn't matter. You think about the dev influencers that you follow as a dev. Every dev has dev influencers. They write books, okay? My shelf is full of O'Reilly books that, and I know the authors there. These are the people that give talks at conferences. When they host a meetup, I go. Okay. You want to become this person. Now, the way to decide where are you going to start is you make a list of who are the developer influencers who are adjacent, who are studying the problem that is adjacent to the problem you're studying, or maybe they're studying the same problem. Okay. Can you name 40 dev influencers who are adjacent to what you're talking about? Then call up Perplexity or ChatGPT, whoever you're working with, right? Call up Claude and say, where do these people post on social media? Okay. Because they've already created the audience. The audience goes there to follow them. That's how you pick what social media platform you're on, right? You want to go where the audience is. And the audience is already following key developer influencers. You want to become like the developer influencers, you follow in their footsteps. Or you become such an authority that people have to go out of their way to find you. It's like, this is the person that knows this problem, right? Wherever he is, you're on Substack, right? Or you're on something crazy. Go do it.
So at early stages, would it be enough to just pick one or two channels? Let's say, I don't know, Reddit, Twitter, and you just make sure that you post daily, or what's the formula for success?
So here's the goal, right? The formula for success is you need to be getting sufficient engagement. Okay. That could be one channel. That could be 10 channels. It depends on your audience. But if you're posting and not getting engagement, then you're not doing it right. You need to either post somewhere else or post more widely, right? The importance is not the channel, the vanity metrics. Oh, impressions are up 20% this week. The importance is, are you having conversations with devs who have this problem, right? Are you having enough of these conversations? Can you figure out how to talk to a dev every day that is having this problem? Because if you can do that, then you can learn enough to actually build a startup to go attack it.
You advise founders, right? You talk with a lot of founders at meetups. What is your kind of like tough love advice that you tend to give more often?
The most common advice, and I'm going to an event tonight, and I guarantee you I'm going to give this advice. Okay, here's the number one advice. Problem, not product. I'll say it again. Problem, not product. Become an expert on the problem. Talk about the problem. Write about the problem, interview people about the problem, become the expert in the problem. Okay. Too many founders, they want to talk about the product. They want to demo the product. They want to explain how the product works. And quite frankly, no one is interested. Devs have problems. They don't know that you have products. They don't care that you've got products. They have problems. They want to talk about their problems. They want to talk about their problems with an expert. And guess what? You're a dev. You have problems, right? Does your partner want to talk to you about your problems? No. Right? Does your manager want to talk to you about your problems? No. Do your kids want to talk to you about your problems? No. Right? But when a founder of a startup shows up and says, I want to talk about your problems, it's like most devs can't stop talking. They want to tell you everything. They want to learn everything because this problem is what is keeping them awake at night. So problem, not product. And also, if you are an expert in the problem, people will assume that you have a product or know of a product that will solve it.
My next question is about enterprise. So we work with developer startups, about 40 early stage startups each year. And a lot of them are moving up the market, right? They want to target enterprise sales.
Everyone wants to move up market. That's where the money is.
And we get this sense that the market is changing. The way you approach enterprise sales is changing. And I have this hypothesis, and not only I, but some other Martians, that tech leaders within enterprise are more ready to play with the tools and toy with different new AI kind of products more than they were eager to try tools before. And we have this hypothesis that creating those interactive kind of high value tools with low risk for those people, for tech founders or VPs or CTOs, is a new channel of adoption, basically. What do you think on that? And in general, how do you think those enterprise sales, how should the approach change, to make it possible in 2025?
So I want to divide up the enterprise world, right? So when people say enterprises, they think about, the Fortune 500 or the Global 2000, okay? But I want to say of that group of people, of that group of companies, there is another group called the Tech 100. And you know who they are, right? Besides the top Google and Microsoft and Apple, right? There's also Uber and Pinterest and Airbnb. And there are about 100 of these companies. These are the companies you want as your first customers because the technical executives at these companies trust their own experience in ways that technical executives at other enterprises do not, right? Most, technical executives at banks or insurance companies or mining companies or manufacturing companies, they're still looking to see what the rest of the market is doing. Technical executives at the Tech 100, they want to try it for themselves. So, and also those are the best customers because they are willing to buy from a startup in a way that an old line enterprise company is not. Because in an old line company, you bring in technology from a startup, people will question your decision, right? Your job is on the line. You're bringing in risk to an established business model. The Tech 100, when they evaluate a technology, they're looking for competitive advantage. And they are willing to take technical risk to gain competitive advantage. And as a startup, if you can get in there and you can show how they can gain competitive advantage, right, and the technical risk is lower than they fear, right, then you have an excellent chance of getting adoption. Now in 2025, budgets are being cleared for AI investments. And this is astonishing. This is something I've been through many other technology waves, right? I'm 900 years old, approximately 867 to be exact. So I saw the PC wave, the internet wave, the mobile wave, the social wave. AI is bigger than them all. What's happening now that didn't happen earlier is that top executives are basically clearing budget line items to say, we're going to invest in AI. I don't know what the investments are going to be, but we're canceling these non-AI projects so that everyone has space, both money and time, to invest in AI because we can see the future. It's already here. So absolutely. And incidentally, if you're a DevTool founder, that's why you should be in San Francisco. It's not because the engineers are smarter in San Francisco. They're not. There are great engineers all over the world. Okay. It's not because, the people that you can hire, right, are better or already here, because it's hard to hire in Silicon Valley, quite frankly. The reason you come to Silicon Valley is the best customers are here. And you're not going to be closing these Tech 100 companies if you're in Tokyo or Lisbon or Peru, right? You need to come here to get these customers. R&D overseas is great, so much cheaper, and really talented people all over the world. But to close your first few customers, you need to be in San Francisco.
So speaking of this networking, business development in San Francisco, let's say I'm a technical founder, I'm here. How do I choose events? There's so much going on. There are hackathons, there are MCP nights, there's pitch nights, there's conferences. Do I just go to all the events? How do I manage? How do you
all the
manage
events?
This?
That sounds so exhausting.
It is.
But quite frankly, if you're going to found a dev tool software, right, presence is so important. Because what's missing from a lot of discussions on sounding a startup is the meaning of trust, right? Your customers have to trust you because they know fresh software is going to break. That's a part of being fresh software. What they want to know is if they're going to engage with a startup, that the startup is committed to making them successful. And so they want to see you in person. When your early prospects, you get them on Zoom and they're interested, okay, the way to close them on their first pilot, go out there and meet them. I've known founders who basically spent their last money buying that plane ticket to Texas or Atlanta and closed their first customer. Right. And that made all the difference for the company because the customer saying, well, the technology was interesting, right? But we weren't sure that you were going to make it work. But the fact that the CEO of the company was willing to fly out to meet us gave us confidence to move ahead with this pilot. And you need to do that. Now, in terms of picking what conferences to go to, right? No one can go to everything. The thought is, terrible, right? But the idea is you focus on your problem. Right? You think about the problem, right? If someone is going to be talking about your problem, then go there, right? You think about who has this problem. If there's an event that people who have your problem are going to go there, then go there, right? Be there in person. The best parts of conferences are honestly not the talks. And I've listened to talks and I've given talks. I would prefer to talk on a podcast like this. It's a lot more comfortable for me. Okay. I would prefer to listen to someone else on a podcast because I listen at 1.5x because that's how I like to listen to things. The reason you go to events is you meet people, right? And then you have these conversations while you're eating pizza, right? Or whatever it is that you're eating at events, right? And that's where you learn stuff. That's where people are the most open and the most honest because they're really hoping you're going to help them. And quite frankly, the culture of Silicon Valley is you help devs help other devs. It's great. That's why I'm here.
Do you think that what investors are looking for in founders in startups is changing right now under this pressure of the new technology frontier?
I think that investors are always looking for a special quality in their founders. Right? You've got to be smart, right? That's kind of a given. If you're willing to step up and play at the startup game, then you've accepted that on. In my experience, what investors really want to see is an intense drive and determination to solve this particular problem, right? You're committed to solve it, right? You don't have to be the smartest person out there. There are plenty of smart people who end up as professors and never found anything. But you have to be committed that there is this problem, and this problem is important for a lot of people, for a lot of organizations. It's getting worse, not better. And my mission is to solve this problem. And if you can show evidence, right, on all the steps you've taken to solve the problem, even before founding a company, then that can be compelling. So if you ask investors, right, what many criteria for investment, but the determination of the founders to solve this problem is one of the highest things. And the great news about 2025 is so many new problems to solve that people have just identified. No one's even tried to solve them yet.
So speaking of different marketing strategies, open source in the product or part of the product is one of the big marketing mechanisms. Beyond the philosophical stance of it, there is a huge marketing component to it. What's your stance on that?
So all of my most successful companies have been open source, but that doesn't mean that open source is a requirement. If you're going to sell software to the enterprise, transparency is the requirement. Enterprise developers need transparency to understand what they're committing their organization to. Open source is one way of providing that transparency. But I'd say open source is a tactic, not a strategy. There are plenty of companies that have figured out other ways to provide transparency than open source. And your devs will tell you whether they're happy or not. I think, GitLab and its open core movement has pioneered a whole new way of saying that you don't have to be open source, but you still can provide transparency.
Are you working on anything new? So you have the developer facing startup, which is kind of like the playbook for go-to-market for developer marketing for many startups.
Yeah, I'm going to plug the book here.
Yes.
Available on Amazon.
Yes. This is the iconic kind of like the legendary developer facing marketing playbook. So are you working on anything new? Are you taking notes when you go to events on how the world is changing, how this playbook should adapt, or you feel like the same practices?
Let me tell you what I'm working on right now, which is integrating AI into everything I do. When I wrote the book, and as part of the book, I basically tell you how to hold developer conversations, right? What you should be asking, what you should be talking about. What has changed since the book came out is that now, or first of all, always ask permission, but 99% of the time, developers will give you permission, right? Make a recording, make a transcript, and then use an LLM to anonymize but consolidate transcripts. And that can be extraordinarily powerful. If you talk to 100 devs, get anonymous transcripts of those conversations, and then put it into Notebook LLM, right? Or even ChatGPT, whatever you're using, okay? And then use ChatGPT to analyze what are the top pains? Who are the people who are experiencing these pains? What are the gains they want to achieve? How is the environment changing on them? That leads to astonishing insights in a small fraction of the time that I used to take, just going through these massive Google Docs line at a time. So I'm excited because I think that the time for startups will be decreased, right? And the quality will be increased. So if I was going to rewrite the book, it would basically be with AI appended to it because AI can improve how you do everything.
That's a great product idea.
Yeah. Why don't you build a new product for DevTool founders?
So our conversation has come to an end, and I like to end with this final question that I call the warm fuzzy question. And the question sounds like this. What makes you feel great about what you're doing right now?
I love working with builders, right? There is so much chaos and strife in the world. And I think that the people who take it upon themselves to say, I am going to carve out at least one problem and solve it for a few or a large number of people by building something new, that's exciting. That's one of the most positive things about how you spend your time. And I remember a friend of mine who left the corporate world to found a startup. And he tells me once every couple of years, he goes back to visit his friends who never left. And he goes and takes the elevator up to his old floor and looks out at this sea of cubicles where people are basically still doing what they were doing 20 years ago, right? And he says, I'm so glad I went into the startup world to actually build something.
Let this message sink in. Let this energy find us. Finally, I want to provide you the stage to share maybe how people can buy your books or meet you at events, or maybe you have a special program that's going on that people can join. Whatever you have going on, please share.
Number one, buy the book. right? It's on Amazon. It's a #1 bestseller in its category, right? I'm working on a course. So I taught a course online with great response, but then when I talked to the founders that took it, they wanted a self-paced course because founders are the busiest people in the world. So I'm working on putting that together sometime this year. That will be ready. I also speak at events. There's an event tonight, which is DevTool founders and investors events. So various events in San Francisco. I'm a partner at Alchemist Accelerator. So if you are a DevTool founder, I encourage you, apply to Alchemist, apply to YC, right? Accelerators are great. My first startup I founded in 1998, which is practically the Stone Ages for now. And there was no accelerators. There was no advisors. There was nothing. We made every mistake, but we were still, successful for that age, for that era. So in one sense, it's so much easier to do a startup in 2025 than it was in 1998. And the other sense, it can be harder because there are so many people doing startups. So the problem is not the mechanisms. It's like, how do we raise money, right? How do we get distribution? The problem is there are so many other startups. How do we rise above the noise? And that is a much better problem to have, because this type of problem is more like a rivalry, right? In that you have competition and they are forcing you to be on your best game. So to use a sports metaphor, right? The best thing for a team is to have tough teams in your division, right? Because they make you good. Okay. If everyone else in your division is crappy, then you can get lazy. So don't get lazy.
This actually reminds me of this reels that I saw about professional soccer teams. And when you are the youngest in the group, you become the best because you are, playing with the stronger, like older kids. And then you grow to be resilient and handle more kind of load than you would otherwise. So this makes perfect sense. And I think that, to second on your idea about being in an NSF, I think this time I really feel this renaissance in San Francisco. And I think it's almost a must to be here for founders because it's exhilarating, it's infectious, you got to be here.
San Francisco as a city is a city that's built on booms and busts. Okay, unlike a lot of other cities in the world that have grown incrementally over centuries, and that sort of preserves the elite from one step to the next. San Francisco has always been about a boom, creating basically a new bunch of successful people, but then a bust that weeds out the people that were just in it for the money and they leave. And this boom and bust has gone over and over again. It's older. We're currently in the AI boom. But before that, there was the SaaS boom. And before that, there was the internet boom. Before that, there was the PC boom. But before that, there was like the gold rush, right? And then the silver rush and the railroad rush. And the 1920s, electricity was the hot technology. And San Francisco has always benefited from this boom bust mentality. So it's not new that we have technology leading to booms that lead to busts. This is part of the cycle that San Francisco has always taken advantage of. And so the San Francisco culture is different from other cities as well. It's much more forgiving. Okay, we expect failure and we expect people to brush themselves off and get up and do it again, right? That's part of the risk taking. That's part of the San Francisco values. Well, I love being here.
So join us in San Francisco.
Join us. Yeah, here's the other thing, because I know Dev founders are the only ones who are going to actually be listening to this all the way to the end. San Francisco is much more accepting of people on the spectrum than cities like New York or London or Paris. You know who you are, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Adam. This was a pleasure. I'm very happy to have you on the show, and I think that many listeners will benefit hugely from just simple ideas. It's not about the product. It's about the problem. This is the biggest lesson we'll take away from this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you for catching yet another episode of Dev Propulsion Labs. We at Evil Martians transform growth stage startups into unicorns, build developer tools, and create open source products. If your developer tool needs help with product design, development, or SRE, visit evilmartians.com/devtools. See you in the next.